Commander Alexandra Alex Mitchell watched her reflection ripple across the crystalline walls of the Galactic Council's arrival chamber. The pearlescent surface cast back a distorted image. A human woman in a crisp Navy diplomatic uniform, auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun, standing straight-backed, despite 36 hours of interstellar travel. She allowed herself a small smile at the irony. Earth's last diplomat, sent to appeal a decision that had already been made. "The Council representatives will receive you now, Commander Mitchell," announced a melodic voice behind her. A VES administrator stood in the doorway, their translucent skin catching the light like morning dew on spider silk. 4 primary tentacles curved gracefully around their humanoid torso, each tipped with delicate manipulators that sparkled with embedded neural crystals. "Thank you," Mitchell replied, noting how the VES's secondary tentacles coiled tightly against their back, a detail missing from her cultural briefings. 6 years of military intelligence before her diplomatic career had taught her to notice such things. Something had the alien on edge. The walk to the council chamber stretched through corridors that seemed to be grown rather than built, their organic curves stretching impossibly high above. Other species hurried past. Bulky methane brothers in environmental suits, crystalline beings that chimed softly as they moved, and more VES, all bearing the same neural implants that marked them as elevated servants to the ascended houses. All of them, Mitchell noticed, gave her a wide berth. Not out of disgust or fear of her humanity, as she'd expected. Their body language spoke of something else. Concern. Pity. She filed the observation away. The council chamber doors swept open with a sound like sighing. Inside, representatives of the 7 ascended houses awaited, each seated upon floating platforms that held them above the chamber floor. Their forms were humanoid, but there the similarity ended. Their skin shifted with patterns of light that spoke of internal energies, and their eyes, too many eyes, Mitchell thought, gleamed with an intelligence that had watched civilizations rise and fall. "Commander Alexandra Mitchell," announced the first speaker, their voice resonating in her chest like a struck bell. "You come before us to appeal the quarantine of your species. You should know that this decision was not made lightly." Mitchell stepped forward, her boots silent on the living floor. "Distinguished representatives of the ascended houses, I come before you not to challenge your wisdom, but to seek understanding. Humanity has been a part of the galactic community for less than a standard century. In that time, we have established trade relations with 17 species, contributed to medical breakthroughs in cross-species care, and demonstrated an alarming resistance to proper order," interrupted another ascended, their skin flashing with patterns that made Mitchell's eyes water. "Your species exhibits dangerous levels of neural instability. Your thoughts are chaotic, unpredictable, a threat to the harmony we have maintained for 10,000 years." As they spoke, Mitchell caught movement from the corner of her eye. A VES attendant had entered with a tray of ceremonial drinks, but as they passed near the speaking ascended, their tentacles contracted violently. The neural crystals in their flesh pulsed once, and the VES's face contorted in a moment of pure terror before smoothing into placid servitude. None of the ascendants seemed to notice, or perhaps, Mitchell realized with a chill, they simply didn't care. "We have reviewed the data extensively," the first speaker continued. "The quarantine will proceed as planned. Your species will be restricted to your home system until such time as you evolve beyond your current limitations." Mitchell bowed, her mind racing behind a carefully composed expression. "I understand, distinguished ones. Might I request time to review the full analysis for the archives on Earth? You have 3 standard days before your transport departs," the first speaker declared. "You may access the public records during that time. This audience is concluded." As Mitchell left the chamber, She felt the weight of too many eyes on her back. But it was the glimpse of the Vess attendant's fear that troubled her most. In that brief moment of terror, she'd seen something in the neural crystals, a pulse of energy moving not from the crystals to the Vess, but from the Vess toward the Ascendant. She had 3 days to uncover the truth, 3 days to understand why the most powerful beings in the galaxy were afraid of the human mind. The game had begun. Commander Mitchell's boots made no sound on the organic floor as she followed the twisting maintenance corridors deep within the station's lower levels. Her diplomatic credentials had granted her access to the public archives, but it was her military training that had helped her notice the discrepancies in the station's architectural plans, whole sections that seemed to vanish into nothing. The air here carried a strange sweetness, like overripe fruit on the edge of decay. Her neural scanner, disguised as a standard diplomatic translation device, picked up increasing energy signatures the deeper she went. Whatever the Ascendants were hiding, she was getting close. A soft keening sound stopped her in her tracks. Mitchell pressed herself against the wall as 2 robed figures glided past an intersecting corridor, their skin pulsing with internal light. Between them floated a suspended animation pod, its surface clouded with condensation. Inside, a young Vess lay unconscious, their neural crystals glowing with an intense blue light. Mitchell waited until the footsteps faded before following. The corridor led to a massive chamber that her scanner identified as the source of the energy readings. She found an observation point behind a cluster of organic support columns and activated her hidden recording device. What she saw made her blood run cold. The chamber was filled with hundreds of pods, each containing a member of the various servant species. Neural crystals had been surgically embedded throughout their bodies, creating complex patterns that pulsed in unison. Energy flowed visibly through these networks, being drawn upward through crystalline conduits toward a central collection point. But it was the Ascendant in the center of the room that drew her eye. Their humanoid form had partially dissolved, revealing a writhing mass of energy that fed directly on the harvested power. With each pulse from the pods, the being's form grew more substantial, more real. "The yield is lower than expected," a voice said, making Mitchell press deeper into her hiding spot. Another Ascendant had entered the chamber, their robes rippling with patterns that made her eyes hurt. "The Vess are becoming resistant to the process." "They always do, eventually," the feeding Ascendant replied, their voice distorted as their form stabilized. "That's why we need the humans quarantined. Their neural patterns, they're too similar to the ancient ones. Too chaotic, too resistant." The human representative. "Commander Mitchell poses no immediate threat. Her kind cannot comprehend what we are, what we must do to maintain order." Mitchell's scanner beeped softly, a warning that its memory was nearly full. She began to retreat, her mind racing with the implications of what she'd seen. But a movement in one of the pods caught her attention. The young Vess was awake, their eyes wide with terror as the neural crystals began to pulse faster. Their tentacles pressed against the pod's surface, and in that moment, their gaze met Mitchell's. A wave of pure emotion slammed into her mind. Pain, fear, and beneath it all, a desperate plea for help. The neural crystals weren't just control devices. They were conduits, turning living beings into batteries for the Ascendant's true forms. Mitchell forced herself to turn away as the harvesting began. She had what she needed. Now she had to find a way to get the evidence off the station and break the quarantine. The lives of billions depended on it. She made it back to the public levels, just as her diplomatic schedule demanded her presence at a cultural exchange event. As she straightened her uniform and prepared to play her role, her mind kept returning to the young Vess's eyes. She had 3 questions now. How long had this been going on? How many species had the Ascendants consumed over the millennia? And most importantly, why were they so afraid of the human mind? The answers she suspected, would shake the foundations of the galaxy itself. The grand ballroom of the Galactic Council station sparkled like a field of stars, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 floating luminescent spheres. Commander Mitchell moved through the crowd of dignitaries, her deep blue diplomatic uniform standing out among the shifting colors and bioluminescent displays of the assembled alien species. "Remarkable how you still attend these functions," spoke an ascendant representative, materializing beside her. "Most species would hide away after such a definitive ruling." Mitchell raised her glass in a practiced gesture. "Humanity values understanding, even in defeat. Besides, the music is exceptional." She nodded toward the Vess orchestra, their tentacles weaving complex patterns as they played instruments that seemed to grow from the very floor. The ascendant's skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "Yes, our elevated servants are quite talented. Though I notice they perform differently when you're near." Mitchell kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. She'd noticed it too. The way the neural crystals in the Vess musicians pulsed more weakly when she passed by. Like her presence created a dead zone in whatever energy field the ascendants used to control them. "Different species, different perceptions," she replied smoothly. "If you'll excuse me, I see the methane-breathing ambassador has just arrived." She made her way across the room, conducting what appeared to be normal diplomatic farewells. But with each conversation, she was building a map in her mind. The Vess servants had been leaving her messages all evening, a glass placed just so, creating condensation marks that formed coordinates when viewed from the right angle. A particular sequence of notes in the music that, when decoded, revealed access codes. Her enhanced genetics, the result of Earth's deep space adaptation program, had given her more than just immunity to the Ascendant's control. She could see patterns others missed, process information faster than standard humans. And right now, those abilities were telling her she was being watched. She paused by a crystalline column, pretending to admire its structure while actually reading the message left in its refracted light. Storage Level 4. Midnight Station Time. Bring truth. The orchestra's music shifted, taking on a haunting quality that made several ascendants turn their heads in displeasure. Mitchell recognized the melody, an ancient Earth composition about freedom, cleverly disguised in alien harmonics. "Fascinating choice of music," said a new voice. Another ascended, this one wearing the insignia of the Security Council, though perhaps a bit chaotic for the occasion. "I find beauty in chaos," Mitchell replied, watching the neural crystals of a nearby Vess server pulse in response to her words. "It's where the most interesting patterns emerge." The Ascendant's eyes, all 7 of them, focused on her with unsettling intensity. "We've been monitoring your movements, Commander. Your interest in station architecture is noteworthy." "Simply professional curiosity," she said, her pulse steady despite the threat in their words. "Earth's quarantine will require us to build more self-sufficient habitats. One must learn where one can." The Security Council member's skin flickered with patterns that set her teeth on edge. "Indeed. Though I wonder what other lessons you're learning during your final days here." As if on cue, the orchestra hit a crescendo, and Mitchell felt something brush her mind. A desperate, quick contact from one of the Vess musicians. An image flashed in her thoughts. The station's power core, its crystal matrix pulsing with the same energy she'd seen being harvested from the pods. "Every moment is an education," she said to the Ascendant, raising her glass once more. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have several more farewells to make before the evening ends." She moved away, her mind already planning the next move. The Vess had shown her something critical, the physical heart of the Ascendant's power. Now she just had to figure out how to use that information before her time on the station ran out. and before the Ascendants decided she was too dangerous to let leave at all. The hidden laboratory deep within Earth's lunar base hummed with activity as Dr. Marcus Reynolds studied the holographic display of the VES neural crystal structure. Commander Mitchell watched through her secure quantum link, her image projected from a sealed chamber in the station's diplomatic quarter. "This is unlike anything we've ever seen," Reynolds said, his dark fingers tracing the complex patterns in the air. "The crystals aren't just control devices. They're like quantum vampires. Each one is part of a vast network that harvests consciousness itself." Mitchell glanced at her door's security seal. 2 hours until the next patrol. "Explain it to me in simple terms, Marcus. What makes humans different? Why can't they control us?" The scientist pulled up another display, this one showing human neural patterns alongside various alien species. "Look at these waveforms. Every species the Ascendants control shows regular, predictable patterns, like a clean signal. But human brains..." He highlighted her own neural scan. "We're like static, chaos given form." "That's what they keep saying," Mitchell murmured. "They call us unstable, unpredictable." "We're not unstable," Reynolds said, his eyes lighting up with understanding. "We're protected. Commander, Earth has been invaded before, long before we achieved spaceflight. Look at these geological samples." The display shifted to show ancient rock strata. "We found crystal fragments in every major extinction layer. The Ascendants, or something like them, have been trying to harvest Earth for millions of years. Each time they failed, the survivors evolved stronger mental defenses." Mitchell leaned forward. "You're saying humanity's chaotic nature is an evolutionary defense mechanism. Our ancestors survived multiple attempts at psychic harvesting. Each time, those with the most resistant neural patterns passed on their genes. We're not just naturally resistant, we're the end result of millions of years of evolution against exactly this kind of predation." A soft chime from her security system made Mitchell tense, but it was only the signal she'd been waiting for. "Stand by, Marcus." She pressed her hand against a section of wall, which dissolved to reveal a hidden package. Inside was a crystal unlike any the Ascendants used, clear as diamond, but with a core of swirling darkness. "The VES resistance got this to me," she explained, holding it up to the quantum link scanner. "They say it's from their ancestral vaults, before the Ascendants came." Reynolds' eyes widened as the scan results appeared on his end. This changes everything. The crystal structure is almost identical to the neural implants, but it's designed to block the energy transfer instead of enabling it. The VES had defenses against this kind of invasion, until the Ascendants found a way around them, Mitchell said grimly. "But look at the base pattern. Compare it to human neural activity." The scientist overlaid the scans, and for a moment just stared. The patterns were nearly identical, the same chaotic, unpredictable energy that made human minds so resistant to control. "We're not just random static," Reynolds whispered. "We're living versions of their ancient shield technology. No wonder the Ascendants want us quarantined. Our very existence proves they can be beaten." Mitchell's hand tightened around the crystal. "How long until you can replicate this? With these scans? A week? Maybe less. But Commander..." He hesitated. "The quarantine starts in 2 days. Then we work faster." Mitchell's voice was steel. "Because this isn't just about humanity anymore. The VES gave us this for a reason. They remember what it was like to be free. And they're counting on us to remember too." A different chime. This one a warning. "Patrol approaching early. Send everything we have to the resistance cells," Mitchell said quickly. "And Marcus, if I don't make contact again, we'll be ready," he promised. "Just like our ancestors were." The connection cut just as heavy footsteps approached her door. Mitchell secured the crystal in its hidden compartment and straightened her uniform. Tomorrow would be the hardest part, convincing Earth's government to risk everything on one last, desperate gambit. But for the first time since this mission began, she had more than just evidence. She had hope. Commander Mitchell had seen death before, but nothing like this. Through the one-way crystalline observation panel, she watched as the Ascendants prepared the processing chamber. Their movements were methodical, practiced. The actions of beings who had performed this ritual countless times across millennia. In the center of the chamber, a young Vest child floated in a suspension field. Their neural crystals pulsed with a soft blue light, almost peaceful, like stars seen through Earth's atmosphere. The child's name was Lyra. She'd learned that from the station's records. Barely 3 solar cycles old, marked as prime quality for processing. The neural pattern degradation in the adult specimens has become problematic, one Ascendant said, their form rippling with hungry lights. The young ones provide a purer source. Mitchell's hand tightened on her concealed weapon, a modified energy pistol designed to disrupt neural networks. She had come here to plant the final sensors, to complete her map of the station's harvest network. But the processing began. The child's neural crystals flared brilliant white. A scream no human throat could produce filled the chamber, a sound of such pure agony that the observation panel itself vibrated. Mitchell saw the child's consciousness being torn away, stripped layer by layer, fed into the crystalline conduits that powered the station. Her combat training took over. The diplomatic facade fell away like a discarded mask as she slammed her fist into the emergency panel beside the door. Alarms blared, a containment breach warning that would force the Ascendants to stabilize the process or risk losing their harvest. The door dissolved and Mitchell charged in, her pistol finding its first target. The disruption beam struck the nearest Ascendant, their energy form wavering like heat over hot pavement. The second shot hit the processing controls, shattering the crystal interface. The suspension field flickered. Mitchell dove forward, catching the child as they fell. Lyra's neural crystals were dark now, but a faint pulse in their neck proved life remained. Impossible. The second Ascendant's voice distorted, as their form shifted between physical and energy states. No human should be able to. Mitchell's third shot cut them off mid-sentence. She cradled Lyra with one arm, while her other hand pulled the modified crystal from her uniform. The one the Vest's resistance had given her, now powered by Earth's quantum technology. She slammed it into the nearest control panel. Throughout the chamber, neural conduits began to flicker and die. The station's automated systems wailed in protest as ancient power networks suddenly lost their feed. Security breach, processing section. A voice echoed through the station's communication system. All units respond. Contain the human. Mitchell activated her emergency beacon, the signal for Earth's hidden operatives to begin their part of the plan. Then she looked down at the unconscious child in her arms. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry we didn't stop this sooner." Running footsteps echoed from multiple corridors. Mitchell's neural scanner showed massive power fluctuations throughout the station as the Ascendants mobilized their forces. But it also showed something else. The neural networks that controlled the servant species were destabilizing, weakened by the ancient crystal's presence. She had minutes, maybe less, before the Ascendants sealed off this section. Her original mission was compromised, but she had found something more important: proof of their atrocities and a weapon that could break their power. Security units approaching, her scanner warned. Multiple hostiles, energy signatures increasing. Mitchell checked her weapon's charge and adjusted her grip on Lyra. The diplomatic mission was over. Now it was time for the soldier to do what she had been trained for, to fight against impossible odds, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, and perhaps, just perhaps, to change the course of galactic history. "Come on then," she whispered as the first security units rounded the corner. Let's show these ancient monsters why humanity never learned to kneel. The station's communication hub blazed with emergency lighting as Commander Mitchell barricaded the doors. Behind her, banks of crystal terminals hummed with power, each one connected to thousands of quantum channels spanning the galaxy. Lyra lay hidden in a makeshift medpod, the child's neural crystals still dark, but her life signs stable. Final warning. Commander Mitchell. A voice boomed through the station's systems. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Continue this defiance, and we will ensure your suffering lasts centuries. Mitchell's fingers flew across the control interface, breaking through security protocols using codes the VES resistance had provided. You've had your last meal of stolen lives, she muttered, uploading the processing chamber footage. The first explosion rocked the hub's doors. Security forces were using energy cutters, their weapons leaving molten trails in the reinforced barriers. She had minutes at most. A chime indicated connection to the primary broadcast network. Mitchell slammed her hand down on the transmission control, and across every world in Council space, every communication device and neural feed, the truth began to play. She watched on the monitors as her message spread. Processing chamber footage, neural crystal schematics, ancient records of harvested species. But most damning were the live feeds from the station's own security systems, showing the Ascendants in their true form as they desperately tried to contain the situation. This is Commander Alexandra Mitchell of Earth, her voice echoed across the stars. For 10,000 years, the Ascendant houses have fed on your people. They are not gods or natural rulers. They are parasites, consuming the life force of entire species to maintain their immortality. The door's outer layer gave way with a screech of tearing metal. Mitchell activated the second part of her transmission, data packets containing the specifications for Earth's neural disruption technology, along with the ancient VES crystal's defensive patterns. Your neural implants aren't tools of elevation. They're chains binding you to creatures that see you as nothing but food. But you can fight back. The technology to resist them exists. Earth stands ready to help any species that wishes to be free. Alarms blared throughout the station as reports began flooding in. On a dozen worlds, servant species were ripping out their neural crystals. On others, underground resistance movements were emerging from hidden bases, armed with Earth-made disruptor technology. The inner door began to glow red-hot. Mitchell could sense the Ascendants beyond it, their energy forms roiling with rage and hunger. She turned to the camera one last time. To the Ascendants, your time of feeding on the innocent is over. Humanity isn't chaotic. We're the universe's antibodies, evolved to fight parasites like you. And we're not alone anymore. The door exploded inward. 3 Ascendants floated through the breach, their physical forms completely abandoned now, showing their true nature as riding masses of hungry light. Enough. The leading Ascendant's voice shook the chamber. You think this small rebellion matters? We have fed on 1,000 species before you. We will feed on 1,000 more. Mitchell smiled as her neural scanner showed critical power fluctuations throughout the station. Look again. Your dinner is fighting back. The monitors showed chaos erupting across every level. VES, Methane brothers, crystalline beings, all the servant species were rising up, their neural implants overloading as ancient defense patterns awakened in their genes. You've forced us to take drastic action, the Ascendants snarled. Their energy form pulsed, and throughout the station, neural implants began to flare with deadly light. If we cannot feed, we will consume everything at once. Mitchell watched in horror as billions of neural crystals across the galaxy started to overload, their stored energy being forcibly drained in a final massive harvest. The screams of dying servants filled the communication channels. She had revealed the truth, but the price would be genocide unless she could find a way to stop the feeding. And as the Ascendants closed in, their hunger radiating like physical heat, she realized she had only one option left. It would probably kill her, but then, she had never expected to leave this station alive anyway. The communication hub's monitors showed death sweeping across the galaxy as the Ascendants forced a final harvest. Commander Mitchell had seconds to act, to find a way to save billions. Her eyes fell on the ancient Vest crystal, still plugged into the hub's control panel, its dark core swirling with untapped power. "Your resistance ends here." The lead Ascendant's voice rippled through reality itself. "Watch as we consume everything they are, everything they could have been." Mitchell's enhanced mind raced through calculations, through everything she'd learned. The neural network, the ancient crystal, humanity's chaotic nature, all the pieces clicked together in one terrible moment of clarity. "You're right," she said, stepping toward the crystal. "It ends here." Her hands moved to the neural interface controls. Dr. Reynolds' words echoed in her memory. "We're not just random static. We're living versions of their ancient shield technology." "What are you doing?" one of the Ascendants demanded, their energy form fluctuating with sudden uncertainty. "Something impossible," Mitchell answered. She pressed her palm against the crystal's surface. "Something human." She felt it the moment the connection formed, her consciousness expanding into the neural network that spanned the galaxy. The pain was beyond description, as her mind was pulled in every direction at once, stretched across light years of space. But she wasn't just connecting to the network. She was becoming it. Her chaotic human neural patterns, the very thing the Ascendants had feared, began to spread through the system like a virus. Everywhere her consciousness touched, the precise, orderly patterns of the Harvest Network began to break down. "Stop her." The Ascendants launched themselves forward, but it was too late. Mitchell's voice came from every speaker, every neural crystal. "You should have studied your history better. Humans don't just resist control. We break it." Through the network, she could feel every being connected to it, billions of minds crying out as the harvest tore at their essence. She reached for them all, her consciousness fragmenting into countless pieces as she wrapped her chaotic energy around their neural patterns like a shield. The Ascendants screamed as their feast turned to poison. The order they had imposed on the galaxy for 10,000 years shattered against the fury of one human mind, choosing to become chaos itself. "Commander," Lyra's voice, weak but clear, cut through the maelstrom. "The pattern. It's too much for one mind." "Then it's a good thing," Mitchell gasped through the pain, "that I'm not alone." She reached deep into her genetic memory, into the legacy of every human who had ever resisted psychic predation. The ancient crystal pulsed with power as she fed that defiance into the network, creating a cascade of freedom that no amount of order could contain. The Ascendants' physical forms began to dissolve as their energy patterns destabilized. "What have you done?" Their voices merged into one howl of despair. "Given every species back their chaos." Mitchell's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Their right to choose. Their right to be free." Across the galaxy, neural crystals shattered as the Harvest Network collapsed. The Ascendants' true forms evaporated like mist in sunlight, their ancient power finally broken by the very chaos they had sought to control. In the hub, Mitchell's physical form slumped against the control panel. But her consciousness danced among the stars, fragmented but not destroyed, a guardian presence scattered through the quantum echoes of the network. She felt Lyra's small hand touch her own, the child's restored neural crystals resonating with a new kind of energy. Not the rigid patterns of the Ascendants, but the beautiful chaos of freedom. "Rest now, Commander," Lyra whispered. "We'll carry your fire forward." And in the silence that followed the Ascendants' fall, a new song began to echo through the quantum channels. A song of liberation, of change, of the power of one mind choosing to become many so that others might be free. The legend of humanity's fire had only just begun. 1 year after the fall of the Ascended Houses, the great chamber of the former Galactic Council hummed with a new kind of energy. Representatives from 100 freed species gathered in what was now called the Hall of Awakening. The crystalline walls, once used to channel harvested life force, now sparkled with natural light from the nearby star. Lyra, no longer a child but not quite grown, stood before the assembled representatives. Her neural crystals glowed with a soft, self-sustained light, not the harsh pulse of forced order, but the gentle rhythm of free will. "We gather today," she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of history, "to mark both an ending and a beginning. The last of the harvest networks have been dismantled. The age of the ascendants is truly over." The chamber filled with a chorus of voices, the harmonic tones of the Ves, the deep resonance of the Methane brothers, the crystalline chimes of the silicon-based species, all free, all choosing their own path for the first time in 10,000 years. Dr. Reynolds, Earth's representative, stepped forward. "But we're not here just to celebrate victory. We're here to honor sacrifice and to ensure such power can never again be concentrated in the hands of the few." He gestured to the center of the chamber, where a new installation had been created. It was a memorial, a quantum matrix that displayed shifting patterns of energy, beautiful in their chaos. And within those patterns, sometimes, a familiar presence could be felt. "Commander Alexandra Mitchell's consciousness still exists," Reynolds continued, "scattered through the quantum substrate of our communications network. Not as a ruler or controller, but as a guardian, a reminder of the price of freedom and the power of choice." The patterns in the memorial shifted, and for a moment, Mitchell's face appeared, not as a static image, but as a dynamic flow of energy, smiling at the gathered assembly before dissolving back into beautiful chaos. "We've detected her presence in over 1,000 systems," Lyra added. "Wherever the old neural networks once reached, echoes of her consciousness remain. She protects our communications, warns of emerging threats, but never interferes with our choices. She gave everything to ensure we would have the right to choose our own path." A Ves elder floated forward, their tentacles moving in the ancient patterns of their pre-slavery days. The humans call it distributed consciousness, the ultimate expression of their gift for chaos. She is everywhere and nowhere, a guardian who asks nothing in return. Reynolds nodded toward the Earth delegation. "Our scientists have confirmed that this was her intent all along. The ancient crystal didn't just help her break the harvest network, it allowed her to become something new, something that could ensure freedom without enforcing control." The memorial pulsed with new patterns as reports flowed in from across the galaxy. Species that had been trapped in rigid hierarchies for millennia were rediscovering their ancient cultures. New alliances were forming based on mutual respect rather than domination. The chaos of freedom was proving more productive than 10,000 years of enforced order. "And so," Lyra concluded, "we don't just remember Commander Mitchell's sacrifice. We live it. Every choice we make, every path we forge, carries forward the fire she ignited. Humanity showed us that true strength lies not in controlling chaos, but in embracing it." The assembly rose in a standing ovation that transcended species and culture. And through the quantum networks that now connected rather than controlled, a whisper of consciousness echoed, not a command, but a blessing. A guardian's joy in seeing her sacrifice bear fruit. In the years that followed, the legend only grew. On 1,000 worlds, children of all species would learn of the human who chose to become chaos itself so others could be free. Of how one person's defiance shattered an empire and rewrote the rules of reality. But perhaps the greatest legacy was the simplest. In the end, it wasn't humanity's strength that changed the galaxy, but their capacity for choice. Their willingness to sacrifice everything, to ensure others could choose as well. And in the quantum dance of free will that now connected the stars, Commander Alexandra Mitchell's fire burned on, not as a ruler, but as a reminder that the most human thing of all is the power to choose one's own destiny.